As a franchisor, you're creating a network of franchisees, a network effect. And one of the most important elements is territory mapping, how you're defining territories, how you're setting them, and the approach you're applying, software that you're using, demographic data that you're tracking. And an important discussion we're going to have today is all about territory mapping. So whether you're a retail business, a food truck, a service-based business, we're going to have a great conversation with Tracey Matchett, Sales Director for Gbbis. And what we're going to talk about is best practices for territory mapping and why you should be applying an approach where you're focused not necessarily on geography, but market opportunity. Tracey, we're going to have a good conversation today.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
By the way, guys, behind the scenes, Tracey's she comes to our FranCamp conferences, had some amazing conversations with our clients. Really, when you get behind the scenes in terms of talking about best practices, territory mapping, software, and even before we started this video, I think we talked about a ton of issues. So I don't know where we want to start, but let's start with the foundational elements, right? Gbbis, territory mapping software. You guys are one of the industry standards and out there. And for this conversation, Tracey, I know you're focused on giving. Let's drill down into best practices and where franchise brands, at least what they need to be thinking about and how we should be focused on mapping.
Sure, thank you. Well, when some of the franchise brands come to me, they have either not done mapping before and they want to understand the best practices, or they've done mapping and they've given away way too much territory to their initial franchisees, or they've worked with other systems that are difficult and cumbersome. So, I mean, the first thing I do is really understand the client, their needs, their goals, what their expansion plans are, and the data that they currently have. If they have any member data, if they have any patient data, if they have any customer data, and really what their vision is in the next year, 2 years, 5 years. But one of the things that really is the foundation for territory mapping success is really easy to use software. And it sounds very basic, but the franchisor and the franchisee, they have so much on their plate that this has to be easy to understand and easy to execute quickly and make sense to the franchisee that they're presenting to. So, it has to be software that is flexible, that allows them to create territories in the manner that they want, whether it's by zip codes or radius or polygons, and allows them to adjust the territories appropriately. And as the markets are expanding, where are the white space areas and where should we expand to next? And then, of course, for the ones that are location-based, what are the best sites for us to, put our location?
Yeah, Tracey, when I think about it, right, and you mentioned something for sure, I think almost every new franchise or emerging brand will always have a situation where we gave away too much territory. And so if I reflect on the journey from new franchisors that maybe are sort of guessing or not mapping this out with good demographic data, but that's a learning point for all of us. And then scaling into years into the future, when we're sitting down with very large private equity deals, one of the biggest due diligence items, they're looking at territories sold, underperforming territories, and opportunity for future growth. So the stakes here are pretty high, or at least they're certainly important. We want to get it right. We don't want to be overselling territories. So let's drill down on a couple of things. One would be if there were a list of best practices that franchisors should be implementing with territories and awarding them, what would be some of the fundamentals there?
Well, some of the fundamentals is getting the right software. Another one is the right data. It's critical to have accurate, up-to-date data that is updated on a regular basis. I mean, we have over 4,000 variables. And I mean, obviously we're gonna work closely with you to choose the variables that are right for you, but it's everything from demographics to spending data to foot traffic, visitor data, to behavioral and crime data. So data is critical. Also striving for balanced territories. One of the things I see is franchisors looking at geography instead of market opportunity. And market opportunity and demand is something that I would say, when you strive for balanced territories, you want all of your franchisees to be successful and profitable. So, how can you set them up for success? And then updating regularly, every year, every couple of years, because competitors change. I mean, if COVID's showing us nothing, it's showing us that, change is imminent always. And, customers change, territories change, migration patterns change. So updating and balancing the territories on a regular basis. And then involving the franchisee. Like if you have existing franchisees, there's nuances that they know. They're, the feet on the ground, and to listen to some of the things that they have to say, but letting them also know that the final decision rests with the franchisor. And then really looking at if the franchisor has other data sets they can bring to the table. We do a lot of advanced analytics for our customers that have member data. Like a lot of the franchisors have member data. A lot of the medical franchisors have patient data. So bringing first-party data to the table and bringing that together with our third-party data to understand opportunity. Those are some of the best practices.
To me, Tracey, I think the big takeaway here is I love the distinction between geography versus market opportunity, right? I think that it's an important mind shift, and I think it's a great way of looking at this. The focusing on that distinction, geography versus market opportunity, right? And you bring up variables, first party, third party. Let's go through, and again, these may be basics and fundamental, and this is okay. What are some of the variables if I give 3 different scenarios: a retail business, a restaurant, and a mobile service business? Using those categories for each, like what are some of the variables that franchisors are honing in on or should be?
Well, most of our franchisors, when I look at right across the board, I mean, we've got 500, 600 clients, and right across the board, most of them start with the basics, the demographics. They start with the population density, population growth. They also look at households and median household income. I mean, those are the basics that pretty much everybody starts with. But then, I mean, if we're working with a, pet franchisor and they're focused on dog training, we want to know how many dogs there are in the areas and other things with respect to pet expenditures. Versus if we're working with a fitness franchise and, they're targeting, let's say, a very upscale, older customer segment for their memberships, we tailor the demographics to meet the needs of each of the clients. So that's when we really get into custom conversations about, what are the key demographics, and then bring into the equation the business data. So, you mentioned retail, you mentioned restaurant, like, let's say you're a chicken franchise. Who are your key competitors? Where are they? What are their sales, in the areas that you're looking to expand into? So bringing competitive data into the table, as well as amplifiers. Like, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of our wellness clients, and they want to know where's their Whole Foods, where is their Trader Joe's, where is their Orange Theory, because that drives traffic of a similar audience to the demographics that they're looking to attract. So make it easy for the customer to come to your location.
Right. Tracey, when you're working with clients and maybe they haven't, because I love these three tiers too, right? You have that general demographic type data, and then more drill down on industry, and then that competitive data, which makes sense, right? So when franchisors, no matter the size, go from what they were doing before to start pulling in this deeper data dive, like what are some of the, like, are they surprised, or like what are the insights they're sharing with you in terms of, how that's changing their mindset on territories, or how they're awarding?
Some of the insights, well, it's interesting because let me use examples as I walk through this. So, an emerging franchise that has never used data before, they'll come to us, and usually they, want to, they want to expand, but they want to expand in a way that they walk before they run. And so, they'll tend to start off with the demographics, the basic demographics like population, household income, and maybe a few other demographics like, are they targeting families with kids? And they'll start right there. Now, the other thing that I get a lot of questions about is, should I define my territories? Like, should it be polygon? Should it be drive time? Should it be a zip code? And I find that a lot of our successful franchisors define by zip code, because number one, the zip codes are touching each other. And you want to use this software for territory creation, management, and optimization. But you can also leverage it for marketing and digital and working with your marketing team and your operations team. So I ask a lot of questions of the franchisors that come to me, like, what's your operations team doing? What is your real estate team doing? What is your marketing team doing? Because to bring all the teams together and have them speak a common language and work together can only leverage and elevate, their company overall.
The so just to go back, most franchisors, or when you see best practice, you're seeing territories defined by zip codes.
And some of our retailers define them by radius. It's a choice. Zip codes are easy to use for marketing purposes, and they touch on each other.
What what are the insights there? In terms of the digital marketing, because that's not a frustration, that's concern I have as a law firm, right? If we have a restaurant, we're awarding territories, but now we have third-party delivery services, or does our media reach outbound into other territories if we're retail? What are some of the conversations going on there with franchisors?
Well, I'm starting to really ask the questions up front, like, what is your marketing department doing? And to tell you the truth, in many situations, the two sides are not talking to each other. So we'll bring it up in our discussions, and we'll say, bring marketing to the table and let's have a conversation. Because, as you're launching a new franchisee, you want to make sure that everything from the grand opening to the marketing initiatives are effective and landing in the territory that they've invested in. So we can really kind of highlight, even within the territory that they're in, where are the hot spots. Like, looking at heat maps is a very simple way of identifying, where to heavy up digital activity.
So we'll do like a mini course here. Let's talk about restaurant, and then maybe we'll go to retail or service. I'm a restaurant franchisor.
Yep.
I'm going to award, no matter what the size, I'm going to award a territory, right?
Yep.
And I want to use your system. But in
Mhm.
general, I want to talk about best practices. So I'm a restaurant. I'm concerned about how I award territories where, number one, I don't want to give away too much territory because I do want to saturate the area from a brand perspective. And I think that'll help sales among our owners. Two is I'm a little worried about third-party delivery services, these, bumping into each other, and how do we deal that? What does the conversation look like, and what should we start talking about?
So it depends on if it's an emerging brand or if it's a brand that has 50 locations already. So if you're an emerging brand, you want to start small. You want to walk before you run. So we will recommend that you look at the key demographics like population, household income, things like that. But we also have some expenditure data, some restaurant expenditure data that would be interesting and valuable to look at. We also have competitor data. So let's say that you're a chicken franchise. We can come to the table and we can plot locations of all of your key competitors. We can look at what their projected sales are. I mean, our business data is updated every month. We update it twice a year in our system. But, you want to know kind of where the competitors are. You want to know where other amplifiers are, like companies that are complementary to your business. Whether or not, like, it's interesting because some of the retailers, a lot of them will, like the QSR, drive time is important, radius. So a lot of them will look at, drive time and radius, and then they may divide up by zip codes within a certain drive time, or they may just do it by zip codes, or they may just do it by radius. So that's a conversation we have that's unique to the individual QSR. But that's the starting point.
Which I think is a great starting point.
I'm gonna add one more thing to that, though.
You cannot add it, Tracy. No. Go ahead.
Data. So our cell phones are tracking us, and the visitor data to competitors. Let's say that they don't have any locations, or let's say that they have some locations. We can look at the foot traffic and visitor data to their locations compared to their competitors, and we can segment the visitors and say, these are the types of people who visit. This is the time of day. These are the days a week. And that can really help with operations as well and staffing. So we can bring that data to the table. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what are your primary goals and what's your budget? We're going to work within your budget. So the other thing that I think is important is working with a partner that is invested in your growth and grows with you at a speed that's right for you. That's critical.
I mean, it's a deeper data dive. I didn't realize even the extent of data with cell phones, and you've mentioned a number of times about that you guys are updating your third party data, right? The competitive data. So are franchisors, as my system grows and I use Gbbis, and am I then looking at and comparing actual performance of my locations compared to competition? Am I looking at those data points later on?
You can. So you can look at your sales. I mean, we recommend that as you start tracking the sales, that you bring in the sales data. So you can bring in your own customer data, you can bring in your own sales data. And I mean, with some of our customers, we get into predictive modeling and sales forecasting and forecasting what future locations will do. But we need a good enough sample size, existing locations that have been open for long enough that we have valid, stable data to do those predictions. So we'll assess, if if that, meets the requirements.
Tracey, sticking on restaurant, if generally, if a franchisor is like, yeah, we got this wrong, what are some of the things that they get wrong that come up?
Well, starting with giving away too much territory.
Mhm.
We've assigned one franchisee to all of Arizona or all of California or, Los Angeles even. So giving away too much territory would be one thing. Another one is not using quality data. That would be another one. And, not having a full vision of, who the competitors are and looking at that type of data. And then the other thing that I don't think we talk about enough is there's a difference between urban markets and suburban markets and how far people will travel. So the urbanicity is something, that we have conversations about too, because obviously that has an impact.
So let's talk about urban, suburban, right? Because that comes up often. I mean, I've seen, and they weren't a client at the time, but when client that shifted over, and we're looking at some of their old territories, and it's in a downtown area, and then it's a radius, or it's a stated radius, and it goes
Right.
across water into another city, and I'm like,
Exactly.
yeah. So I mean, we've seen those things.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a big one.
oh, it
And
is. All right. So it's not just, yeah.
no, it's total it happens often. And we'll look at this and what are the natural boundaries? What are people willing to travel? What are the highways that people travel? That's why it's really fascinating. And I often do this in demos. I'll bring in an example of a retail or restaurant, and I'll show where the customers are coming from, because there's certain routes that they actually travel, to get to the location. And if it's a downtown location, it depending on what the retail or restaurant business is, what are you doing to attract the business consumers? And how are you going after the office workers, for those people who are back at in the office? So I think that is a strategic conversation to have too.
Let's not shifting. I'm very curious about this next part of the conversation, which is um, issues of cannibalization or not cannibalization.
Yeah.
And I've sat with so many thoughtful franchisors who planned out their territories wisely and are doing the right thing by their franchisees, and saturating a market in a good way where it's producing more revenue, not less, for each of the franchisees. How do franchisors, or what are some of the best practices for a franchisor to demonstrate to franchisees, hey, this is to your benefit, you're in territory A, B and C are territories that are going to benefit you once we put locations in there?
It's about the data. It's showing them the data up front and really showing them what the potential is, what the opportunity is. And even if you have examples of successful territories in the past, I mean, we've done analysis and we do this quite frequently. Let's say that someone has 30 territories, 20 territories, 40 territories, whatever the number is. And obviously, there's territories that are more successful than others. And looking at what are the commonalities and common demographics amongst the more successful territories compared to the least successful. And we look not just at the demographics, but we look at the business data, we look at any customer data they can bring to the table, and we really paint a picture of what the ideal opportunity looks like for a territory. And then we highlight that and we say, okay, this is a study that we've done. This is what drives your market growth. And here's where to focus within your territory. And this is what the opportunity is.
Tracey, the from a is there a big difference? So we just talked about restaurants and some of the data points, and how do you view like mobile service businesses? What are the different thought processes that go on when they're evaluating territory mapping?
There are more questions about the mobile food trucks.
Oh,
And
I like,
is that
let's talk, all right, let's go back a little. Let's
okay?
talk about food trucks, because that is so interesting. If I could set this up a little. Oh, wow. All right. So here's some of my thoughts on food trucks that give me not concern, but things we're thinking about as we're developing FDDs and franchise programs. One,
Mhm.
everyone typically comes in. So this is the territory mapping for food truck segment, right? So
Yeah.
people come in and say, I like Kona ices. I'm going to give a little territory for each truck, and you get a territory and you go. And as a lawyer and our development team, that's the easiest model for us to set up, which is one territory, one franchisee. But then my concern is you're a brand new franchisor, you just have one truck, and there may be great opportunities right outside your territory. Bigger events. I won't say like festivals and stuff like that, because we can have carve outs. But there may
Yeah.
be an auto dealership that wants to have an event there. And so now I have to create an exclusion or an opportunity for you to go to out of territory. Okay. But now also you're just starting off, maybe in the state of New Jersey, in year 1 and 2, you've only sold 3 trucks.
Right.
So is it in my best interest to keep you in a confined little area, or to say, you know what, we're going to allow you to operate in a much larger county, and maybe we'll allow others, but we're going to cap it out, which is a little more complex for us to develop. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do or wrong. And then we have the captive accounts and the food trucks and festivals. I'm just throwing all these random thoughts, not saying they're supposed to make sense, but anyone listening to this who has a food truck, these are things to start thinking about, right? Because we don't want cookie cutter. I'm now going to throw it to you, Tracey. What goes on there? What's your thoughts?
I mean, one of the things that I would really look at there, and there's a lot of thoughts, and it really does come down to the specifics of the client. So to generalize something like that is a little difficult. But with the food trucks, it's looking at the traffic data, and I don't mean the car traffic data, I mean the foot traffic data. Like, whether it's festivals, whether it's parks, whether it's gathering places, like where is the traffic at what times, and how can you divide up the territory, and ideally not going outside into someone else's territory, because that does get confusing. So it does complicate things, but it's really bringing in, it goes beyond, let's just say it goes beyond looking just at demographics. Often we get questions like, where are the parks? Where are the, gathering places? And it's bringing in other business data sets that are data sets where people gather.
So food trucks, parks, gathering places, business data. What are some of the conversations that the food truck franchisors are having when they're talking with you or speaking with you about territory mapping and data points?
And they want to know the times. So it really comes down to, a lot of them want to, and we look at the visitor foot traffic data. So it's the mobile cell phone data comes into play.
Do you see food truck franchisors, do they when they're having conversations with you, do they differentiate between having a base location and then mobile operations, or that's not part of the conversation?
It's interesting because some of them are strictly interested in the food truck, and some it's the base location. So I always ask the question, and you want the two to complement each other.
Right. One issue we've seen also come up is, restaurants that are operating food trucks, right? So you have the brick and
Right.
mortar restaurant, then you have the food truck, and to me, I think best practice, at least the way I see it in the industry, is let the food truck be basically an extension of the restaurant operating within your designated territory.
Oh, I feel as well. I would agree with you on that. In fact, looking at the restaurant and looking at the visitor data and saying, who are the types of people that are coming to the restaurant, and tell us more about them. Like, for example, are they middle income families with young kids? And if that is like one of the key driving forces of who's, being attracted to your restaurant, then where do you go out and find that in your territory so that you can, number one, through the food truck, introduce the restaurant, maybe go to a park, maybe, like I live in this little wellness community just outside of Atlanta. And we have the food trucks come here all the time. And the ones that are the extensions of restaurants, it's like, oh, I didn't really know that restaurant was like 30 minutes away. We'll go there too, right? And that's what you want. You want to increase frequency of visit, to both, really.
Yeah, I think you phrased that well too, and the analysis behind it, and that example, like who are our customers and how do we reach out to them? The frustration I sometimes get, franchise developers or salespeople, then the next question becomes, well, we want to allow them to operate the food truck outside their territory. Then
Right.
I'm like, well, now you can't sell that territory, and where does this end? And
I
you know,
agree.
so
I
that's not
agree.
just in my world. You hear that often.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. Like, let's keep our territories clean. I mean, that's my perspective on it because it gets really like the last thing you want is to be known as a franchisor where your franchisees are fighting with each other, because that gets around. I mean, if your franchisees are happy, that is the best advertising you can have. Like, you treat them fairly, you're transparent with them, they trust you, and I mean, that's worth gold.
Right. And there's and you're demonstrating discipline, right? Because I mean, they're a franchisee, they invested in a brick and mortar, they're in a restaurant. Like, this is
Yeah,
great way to boost it, but let's not dilute what we're doing. Yeah,
yeah,
that I'm glad you said that, because and the amount of time our team has spent, because we'll model it out for our clients, um and a lot of our clients are, we it's not like we're billing hourly and stuff, and it's usually because a developer, and like, well, just add this or that, and then we'll hear questions like, well, the developer said we could have non-exclusive territory. I'm like,
right.
yeah, and then I'm like, I want to kill myself, but
Yeah.
it's not our client's
I do
fault.
too.
But the good part is we have amazing clients and they make the right decision and stuff like that. But yeah,
So, Charles, can I just say one more thing? You just
yeah,
brought up a really good point. It's really important for these guys to work with someone who has their back and someone that cares about their growth effectively. Like, assemble a team. That's what I love about you guys is trust, authenticity. Like, assemble a team of people who don't just want to sell something to you. They truly are there as your partner to grow. That's a big deal.
yeah. I mean, in life's short. I like, and you've met some of our clients, Tracy. They're interesting people. They're fun people, and they are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
This is not for this video, but I'll say it. Like, sometimes I get a little sad because it's like, you build up trust with a client, and now a developer that or an advisor that claims all these things is, and then the client's like, well, I'm going to listen to him because they said you don't know. Like, I'm like, all right, but no, we have good clients with that, and you want to look out for them. And look,
I agree.
I see the end result, which is when we're sitting with private equity or we're sitting with a nice valuation, like that territory mapping makes a big deal. So, so I love the food truck discussion, right? We touched on retail, restaurant, food truck. Although I'm still trying to figure out, and I haven't been able to, and I'm not saying I have it right. I may not. Like with a lot of our new food truck clients, I'm like, why not allow them to operate throughout this whole county and build it up? And but I haven't been able to figure out the formula that works exactly, although we have some different models.
Yeah,
And
we're working through different scenarios, but there's also the service brands. I mean, that's a huge
yeah,
area of franchise development as well,
well,
is the
let's
service
dive into
businesses.
that. Let's dive into service, Tracy. So, I mean, it's interesting. I'll set this up a little. Home service-based brands or, children's supplemental education, anything that's mobile. It's not happening at a brick and mortar location. We'll call that mobile service, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so some of the things we see there is, like you've said earlier, naturally newer franchisors, they over award territory. And one issue we see there is we'll see an amazing franchisor, they've grown significantly, they happen to move over to our firm, and we're looking at the data, and one of the initial issues we see is maybe there's 40 franchisees. Franchisee A is doing well, franchisee B is doing well, C is doing
mhm,
well, but A's territory is like twice the size of B, and B's territory is twice the size of C, and
right,
we're calling them each one territory because that's how their FDD was set up.
right,
And so there we have issues of number one, when we're presenting our item 19 is the data representative because they're different size territories.
right,
Two, and the answer there may be, Charles, it's the same because it turns out they can't service that whole territory. So that gets the issue two, which is we have underutilized territory, right? And how do we police it? So typically what we do is for service-based businesses, we found best practices. We go to a multi-territory type FDD, meaning you sign up, you could buy a territory meets the following criteria. And if you
right.
qualify, you could buy up to X number more territories, meaning,
I like that.
yeah, well, that to me is what I found. So I'm a
Yeah,
franchisee. I'm going to buy 3 territories. So it's town A, B, and C. They all
right.
fall under one franchise agreement. So
Yep.
that's my franchise business. And then the
Hmm.
other things that we're looking out for is I don't want underperforming or underutilized. So not to be punitive, we say that, look, our royalties may be X percent, but it's subject to a minimum monthly amount. And that minimum amount is X for one territory, Y for two. And it doesn't go up times two, but it goes up a little. And the conversation I have with our clients is like, look, if someone buys 3 territories, their lifestyle changes, they're going to say, hey, I can only really service one. Can I give back 2 and revert back
Right.
to my single royalty? I'm like, that's a win. Let them out. So that's how
Yeah.
we approach it. So talk to me, Tracy. What's some best practices in this area?
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, really, the service territories and the location-based territories, the best practices is the same thing. I mean, get a really easy to use software that has the right data in it, and divide up those territories so that they're equitable. And equitable doesn't mean same size of geography. It
Right.
means same potential in terms of sales revenue. And the interesting thing, I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with a service-based client of ours, and we had done a whole analysis. They had like 92 territories, and they were all divided differently. And what drives the successful territories? So we analyzed the top percentage and the bottom percentage. And we really looked at the demographics, the businesses, other things that were driving success. And, I think zooming in on those territories and doing like the heat maps and overlaying heat maps, and if they have customer or member or patient data, bringing that in and looking at that too. And once you've done all of that, I mean, you want to look at the operator themselves, because we got into a conversation where they had given away a lot of territory to one operator in particular, and this person was not servicing their territory properly. And there were smaller territories that were just absolutely like, like much more successful. And zooming in on this larger territory and saying, okay, well, here is where they should focus their attention. But then it comes down to picking the right operator too, and the right franchisee. I mean, that is a part of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of push and pull here.
Yeah.
And when I have conversations with clients and they say, yeah, territory is 3 times size of someone else, but the territory size we found out is not going to determine their sales, right? Which gets to your point
Right.
about the operator.
Mhm.
And there's, part of that push and pull is usually service businesses are driven by broker sales and franchise sales organizations. They like to sell multi-territory, which, if done correctly, is a win. If done incorrectly, you've uploaded, your front-loaded initial franchise fee, but now you have underperforming units, right?
Right.
I think the good news for franchisors out there is you could adapt over time. Just because you followed a particular system in year
For
one, you
sure.
could, yeah, and we see it all the time where we're going to now sort of retro fit or modify, like maybe we go to a multi-territory. And the other thing is, in your item 19, you want clarity. You don't want franchisee attorneys suing you and saying, well, you presented all this data, but this person who has the best numbers is 5 times the territory. And even though internally, it's not because of the territory, it's them. So we want to cut out all those issues.
I couldn't agree with you more on all that.
Yeah, Tracey, it's a big conversation. And sometimes I feel bad having because I don't want people thinking, oh, he's saying that because that's what lawyers say. And no, it's like, usually we'll see like, hey, here's what we recommend. Number one, we agree with you. You should be not basing your territories on population, but number of K through whatever schools, or number of qualified households with income exceeding or
Right.
single family right? So that realization. So now we modify the FDD to modify those territories. Okay. And then maybe we put in a multi-territory structure. And then my conversation is like, let's make our item 19 better. I know you're not going to like this from a sales standpoint, but that franchisee that you sold 2 years ago, that's 5 times the size of everyone else, in your item 19, let's say it's the equivalent of 5 territories. So we don't have a lawyer saying we're misrepresenting, and we have conversations there. So I think the good news for the franchisors, we all go through this. I think it's adapting. Like, not everyone starts off with Gbbis or a territory mapping software, but you got to get
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had, one extreme is the emerging franchise. And in fact, at, Frank Camp Dallas, we met some people who were about to
Yeah.
become, and that's a great place to start the conversation. But then I've had people who have been, 200, 300 locations, and come to us and said, we've been doing modeling and it doesn't make sense. And, it's confusing, and we don't trust what we're getting from another provider. Like, let's tear this down and start again. So we've dealt with all sides of it. And, to your point, it's really looking at the uniqueness of the situation, asking the right questions, and being their partner.
Which Tracy, it's like a perfect, like, and I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate what you do for our clients. And um, I mean that genuinely. It's been a lot of fun. And for everyone's watching this, reach out to Tracy if you have questions at Gbbis, and we'll put some information up there. And hopefully, Tracy, we'll do this again. I'm going to come up with, I think I need smarter questions. I think I need, but
I
it's
think your
been an
questions
absolute,
were great.
Tracy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Charles. I really appreciate it.